No introduction in this group, but I'll provide an appropriate introduction anyway. Man's been successful at just about everything he's ever done. He grew up in Barnegat Bay. Home of Fleet 63, and I have his new book out, by the way. Here it is, and not once are ensigns mentioned. And not once is Fleet 63 mentioned, who let him escape and sail other boats. Fortunately for U.S. sailing, he sailed on America's Cup boats. But before that, he was the Barnegat Bay Junior Sailor of the Year. He attended SUNY Maritime Academy, where he was 3 times All-American and twice U.S. College Sailor of the Year. Of course, he was the tactician on Courageous and sailed on a number of other America's Cup challengers that were not as successful. He sailed in the Fastman race, which I have a whole book on, which is a terrific story. But beyond that, he has become the spokesman for sailing in general, but certainly the spokesman for U.S. sailing. He has covered America's Cups for ESPN since 1987, and Olympics for NBC, or whoever's doing it now, since 1988. NBC. He sailed with every legend that I can name, and I took them out of his book. I believe he said with all of them. Ted Turner, Paul Caird, Buddy Melges, Tom Blackhaller. I was going to say Dennis Connors. I wasn't sure you sailed with him. And a friend of ours from New London, Katie Beals. You remember? She crewed for you once. Yeah, New London, yeah. Okay. Won countless regattas, America's Cup, Emmys. He's been inducted to the America's Cup Hall of Fame. He's cruised all over the world with his wife and his 3 now adult and gorgeous daughters. The pictures are in the book, by the way. It's like the Letterman show. I get to plug your new book. One of the various boats that he's owned in the past is Whirlwind, which appropriately describes his lifestyle. But there's a quote in this book, and I think it's most appropriate, and I think it's a terrific attitude. And he says he would like to be most remembered as someone who made sailing interesting for a non-sailing audience. And he's certainly done that, and more for the sailing audience, which we are a part of. And I had intended to introduce all kinds of past Commodores and past national champions. So I skipped over that, so I'll get to that on Thursday. If you guys want to, we can all stand up. I've got the number of people I'd like to, I guess, bring up to their feet. Past Commodores Eric Jones, Elizabeth Brinklow, Zeke DeRica, all here. Bob Geary, Ward Woodruff, Dean Schneider, Charlie Sly, Joe Verplank, Charlie Shoemaker, Bill O'Hara, and Dick Torpy and Bob Warner, all here as past Commodores, here to hear you speak. And past national champions, Dean Schneider, Tom LaBelle, Zeke DeRica, Ben Staget. You can hold the applause to the end. Dick Torpy, Brian Simpkins, Charlie Shoemaker, Mark Swanson, Vince Morello, and that's it. And with that, I will turn it over to the keynote speaker, Terry Jobson.
So my goal tonight is to make it interesting for sailors. Everything's beautiful, but I have a complaint. But I understand tomorrow we're going to do better for the knives and forks. A lot of buzz around the waterfront, around the club today. Everybody preparing for the race, getting the boats measured in successfully, I understand. All the boats are in the water now. It's going to blow 8 to 18 for the next 4 days straight, I promise. And I can tell you, the ensign class, the scary thing about 50 years is I actually remember when the ensign started. I got a penguin that very year. Anyway, the ensign is a beautiful boat, a beautiful family boat, and I can tell the camaraderie here. And Carl Alberg did everybody a favor when he invented this boat, and I have a few stories to tell about it, but I think you're going to have a very special regatta, and I wish you all well. Now, having said that, I went to a party this winter, and it was cold out, and the fireplace was going, and this elderly gentleman, well into his 80s, had decided that for him, it was time to retire. And I went over to the fireplace, and there on the mantle of the fireplace is this brick of metal. And on the brick of metal is an inscription, and it had the words, Yacht Racing 1946-2009. He had taken every trophy he had ever won, melted it down, and there it was. So regardless of how it goes this weekend, just remember that. Yacht Racing 1946-2009, and you're going to be okay. Well, sailing is a great sport, and my plan tonight is to give a cross-section of our sport of sailing, the highlights, the lowlights, and everything in between. And I have one message which I'll share with you what this sport is all about. The routine here is easy. I'm going to tell about half a dozen stories, and then I brought some pictures along, which I hope you'll enjoy. There's no quiz, there's no paper. You can quote me if you want. And anyway, if you have something really funny to say, speak up nice and loud. I got to speak in Nantucket in a couple days, and I can always use a little new material. Now, sailing is a sport that you never know how things are going to go. By the way, are there anybody here that have not heard me speak before? Okay. Well, those of you that have, you might have heard one or two stories, but I'm trying to make some of these new. So anyway, it's very important in a yacht race to try and get the lead, and anytime you can get local knowledge, that can help you out. And I'm sure here on this beautiful lake, maybe the locals have a little bit of knowledge that those that are traveling from afar don't know. So when you have this local knowledge, you try and use it to your advantage. So here's the regatta. And for those from New Jersey, where I grew up, I hope you appreciate this story. It's a story of New York and New Jersey, local knowledge, international intrigue, being clever, and a little lucky at the same time. So we're racing in New York Harbor. Very unusual to actually race sailboats in New York Harbor. It's a match race regatta, and there's 8 countries represented in these boats, and I'm representing USA. And when you see USA on your sail, it's important. You want to do well. You're representing America. Well, all week long we have these elimination series, and we, USA, make it into the finals against some country called Australia. The same Australian crew, by the way, that several years earlier had taken the America's Cup from the New York Yacht Club. Now we're racing them in New York Harbor. It's the last race of the regatta. And whoever wins this wins the big pickle dish. Anybody have a pickle dish at home? Well, here's the deal. We had to go windward out toward the Verrazano Bridge, long way downwind, almost to the battery, and then back upwind. We're going downwind. The wind is coming under the Verrazano Bridge out of the south, and we got spinnakers up. The 2 boats are a length apart, and at this moment, we're in the lead. But there's a problem. The problem is the current is ebbing out of the Hudson and East River about 3 or 4 knots, and we're barely making progress down the shoreline. No bearing at all. And with the Australians a length behind me, my heart's pounding, I'm feeling the pressure, and I decided it was time to be clever. So I asked one of my crew to go down below and just kind of look at the chart with the question, how deep is the water behind Liberty Island and Ellis Island? Maybe it's shallow back there, no current, we could go behind the islands and beat the Australians that way. The word comes up that it's 6 feet deep at low tide. So as we creep up to the ferry dock by Liberty Island, maybe some of you have been there, you know where the tourists come. Just as we got to the dock, without warning, I jived away from the Australians to go behind the island. No current. I went screaming down behind Liberty, on past Ellis, jived back out into the current where the leeward mark is, rounded the leeward mark, heading for the finish. The Australians were still stuck in the current, and we went on to win the race. Thank you, but my story doesn't end there. Fast forward an entire year, and we're in the same regatta, and we make the finals against the same Australian team. And you can imagine, these Aussies did not like being beaten by this trick, by this American. And once again, the wind is coming out of the south under the Arizona Bridge. The current is ebbing out of New York Harbor. We're barely making progress down the shoreline. We've got spinnakers up. It's the last race. Whoever wins the championship. But this year, the Australians are a length ahead of us. How? I'm asking myself, am I going to pass them? And as we creep up to the ferry dock, without warning, the Australians jive away from us to pull the same trick on us that we had pulled on them the year earlier. Now, the sad part about this story is we did not have our ESPN cameras and microphones to see the look on their faces and what they had to say when they actually got behind the island to find out that that winter, a bridge had been built. So we won that race too. Now, one of the nice things about the Ensign class is it's a boat that connects the generations. And I noticed a number of you have one young person to work that age average down a little bit. Well, let's face it, there is a generational rivalry in every sport. So this is a little story about a generational rivalry. So last year I'm sailing my Etchels in a regatta in Annapolis. It's the end of the fall season, and whoever wins the regatta gets the bigger pickle dish, and there's 20-some boats in the regatta, 5-race series, it's race 5. Sunday afternoon, blowing good, 20 knots in Chesapeake Bay, windward leeward, twice around, 2-mile legs. And at this point in the regatta, we are tied with another boat. By the way, let's see, I was 60 at the time, my main trimmer was 61, my bowman was young, he was 54. Over on the other boat, the helmsman is 27, the main trimmer is 26, and the bowman's 24. We're tied with them going into the last race. So we come off the starting line, we have a great start, so do they. We're bigger than they are, but they're hiking harder and they get ahead. Windward mark, they round 4 boat lengths ahead. Downwind we go to the leeward gates, and they stretch out, working that spinnaker a little bit more, and they round 6 lengths ahead. Back upwind, 2 legs to go. Now how about this? Every time we tacked, these people would tack on our breeze. It was so bad, an oxygen mask popped out of the boom. I mean, you laugh, I keep it right next to the alcohol dispenser. Surely you have those on the Ensigns. Well anyway, halfway up the windward leg, they were now about 8 boat lengths ahead, and we tacked away, but this time, they didn't cover us. Bad mistake, as Dennis Conner once found out in a match race some years ago. So we head off to the left side, and sure enough, we get out by the port ley line, and the wind shifts to the left 15 degrees, so that when we come back together, we had to actually dip their stern, and we tack right on their stern, heading for the windward mark. Now, this must have upset the young helmsman, because the helmsman, as we're heading for the windward mark, starts staring at me. So I'm sitting there, staring at him, he's staring at me, and I have to report it was a thing of beauty, because I'm quite sure he did not mean to hit the mark. Being older and a little more experienced, we didn't look at him, we didn't say anything as he was doing his 720 turns for hit, or the 360 for hitting the mark. We went on to win the race. Now, we're back in at the Annapolis Yacht Club an hour and a half later to get our pickle dish, and the young man and his crew get up there to get their second prize, and a long pan face, and anyway, I'm thinking to myself, gee, usually I get second regatta, I feel pretty good about it. But anyway, after the prize giving, I went up to him, and I said, look, I know how you feel, believe me. I've lost more than my share of races in my career. However, look at it this way. 30 years from now, when you meet some 20-year-olds, you'll know how good we feel. So just So a friend of mine, who is a friend of all Americans really, about 2 years ago, passed away, Walter Cronkite. And as a young man, I got to sail with Walter. So I want to tell a couple quick stories about Walter Cronkite. And one year, I got to sail with him to Bermuda. And we get out into the Gulf Stream halfway to Bermuda, and the waves are getting big, and the wind's coming up. And I start running around the boat, and I got the main reefed, and I go down below and get a little working jib up on the deck, I'm getting ready. And before I get the jib ready to pull up, he calls me back. He says, "Jobson, you never got my name right. Come back here." "Yeah, what is it?" "Well, wait." He says, "Look it, if you want a smaller jib, why don't you just roll it up?" I'd never been on a boat with a roller furler. We didn't have those on East Coast in Barnegat Bay. And Walter, he was a clever man. You have to think of him in his voice. So he tells this story about how proud he was to become a member of the New York Yacht Club. And in honor of that, he said he went out and bought himself a yacht. A 32-foot yacht. He took it on the club's summer annual cruise. And at the end of the first day's squadron run, he's coming back into the dock. And as Walter says it, as he came into the dock, the Commodore of the New York Yacht Club himself came down to greet him. Walter says, "I was so proud with the Commodore coming down the dock and in front of my crew. And when he arrived on the dock, he took me off to a room. It was a private room. It was a men's room. And he told me if I wanted to remain a member of the New York Yacht Club, I should learn to fly the burgee correctly." He had it upside down. Now, this little story is from my friends from New Jersey. So here you go. You'll relate to this. And those of us from New Jersey have to stick up, because that show on TV is terrible. But anyway, I spent a number of years racing with a great sailor, and he was a concert conductor for life at the Berlin Philharmonic. His name was Herbert von Karajan. And I was the maestro's tactician for 5 summers, and we'd go race with them in Europe. And I'll never forget, we had this one race, it was off between Sardinia and Corsica, and it was a 200-miler. And we woke up the next morning with 60 miles to go, or 4 hours to the finish. We go about 15 knots in these big maxi boats. We were a half a mile behind the leader, but in second place. And all afternoon long, we ran the guy down, and a mile or so from the finish, we got into the inevitable luffing match, and luffed up and collapsed his chute and went over the top, and we went on to win the race. And the maestro, well into his 70s at that point, put his hands across the chest as if he'd finished Beethoven's Ninth, the tears coming out of his eyes that we won this great victory for the maestro. So we come back into the dock, and we're sitting there at the dock there in Puerto Cervo, Sardinia, when Juan Carlos, the King of Spain, comes down to greet us and congratulate the maestro on his victory. And the king had this entourage, and anyway, kind of at the end of the conversation, I shot back, "Well, you guys had a nice race too, nice going." And the king and the entourage leave, and the maestro gets really mad, and he says, "Gary, you don't call the king yous guys." But like I said, I grew up in New Jersey. So. Great things about sailing is there are some really good rivalries out there. And one of the greatest one was between the late, great Tom Blackhauler and Dennis Conner. And this one summer, we're racing 12 meters, and anyway, Conner and Blackhauler, they would have little skirmishes, and we get into a protest, and Tom would spell Dennis's name wrong, and the protest form would come out Denise Conner, and he would upset him. But anyway, we had this young crew member on our boat called K.R. He was only 23 years old, and he decided on his own that he was going to get Dennis Conner's attention. So here we are, 2 minutes before the start at 12 meters in the America's Cup Trials, and the 2 boats are luffing alongside, and 11 crew on both boats looking very determined and kind of angry, and give them a look. And in the middle of this, K.R. pulls out of his little bag a grenade, pulls the pin, and lobs it over into Conner's cockpit. Now, it was a phony, but they all cleared out, and K.R. got about 2 weeks off from sailing on the boat. And one of the great things about sailing in these 12-meter syndicates, as a young man, you'd have the wealthy 65-year-old guy that would always take us to dinner someplace, and I'll never forget this gentleman from Texas gave me a really good lesson on how the world works. And he took the crew of Courageous, without Ted, to the swanky restaurant in Manhattan on 57th and 3rd. And I remember showing up early, and there's a line around the block, and the maitre d' kind of gives me an up and down and says it's going to be 3 or 4 hours. We're probably not going to get in tonight. Too bad. Well, about 15 minutes later, the Texan showed up in his limo with a young lady on his arm, and I said, Mr. Pitts, we're just not going to get in tonight. He says, oh, really? Come with me. Watch this. And he goes, now, we've had a little inflation since then, but he goes up to the maitre d' in his Texas accent and says, would $1,000 get the job done? Well, about 3 minutes later, tables are being put together, cloth is being spread out, and there we are, and I'm sitting next to Mr. Pitts. I said, Mr. Pitts, I mean, it's really nice that you got us this table, but certainly it wasn't worth $1,000. He said, son, $1,000, hell. Once I got credibility out the window, it cost me $50. All right, how about one more story and then we'll show some pictures. Let me get a good... When you're behind in a race, it's really hard to pass another boat. But when you do, it gives you a great sense of satisfaction. Would you all agree? Yeah. Well, let me ask you, we're family here now. Who here, my hand is up, who here has ever been last in a sailboat race before? Yeah, welcome to the club. And who here has won a sailboat race before? Which is more fun? So these maxi boat owners are people that are driven, wealthy, they don't understand second place, and we're in this maxi boat regatta. This one happens to be in Spain, and we've got, maybe 20 miles to go to this reach mark. Hold on a second. Straight Mount Gay.
It's a little white.
What a hero.
I'm working on a novel. Wait till you see the plot. I'm going to share it with you tonight. That's my warm-up act. So anyway, we're in the maxi boat regatta, and we've got a mark. We're on a close reach. It's 20-some miles away. We've got around that mark and then set the spinnaker and go down to the finish line. And we're again in second place, and our rival is about a half a mile ahead of us. There's 20 boats in the regatta. The others are way behind us. And the owner keeps telling me, you got to get more aggressive. You got to pass him. Well, the reason the other guy's ahead of us is he's going faster. We're on a close reach. How in the world are we going to pass? Your job is to pass him. Well, on the way to the mark, 20 miles away, about 4 miles ahead, there's a buoy. And the question is it a mark of the course? If it is, which way do you pass the mark? So we go out and get the race instructions, which are conveniently written in Italian, and we can't figure it out. But clearly the boat ahead of us, Kealoha, can't figure it out either, because as they approach this mark ahead of us here, a couple miles up, they go and to go pass it to starboard, and then suddenly they bear off to pass it to port, and at the last second, they pass the buoy to starboard. Idea. So as we come up to the mark, I make it look like we're gonna, and they got binoculars watching us. We go to pass it to starboard, and at the last second, I bore off hard and pass the buoy to port. With that, 23 members of the other boat stood up, and the boat tacked to come back. 2 maxi boats. We passed within a half a length. Neither crew on either boat acknowledges the existence of the other as we go by. They rounded to port. We went on to win the race, and it was so much fun later on to find out it was not a mark of the course. So we won that race too. Okay, how about one more story and then we'll go on to pictures. So, I mean, the 50th anniversary here is pretty strong. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about marketing sailboat racing and how this works, and the Ensign class fits into this. Mother's milk. So, a gentleman, a New Yorker named Francis Swigeth, who designed all those beautiful ACATs, or some of them. Charles Maurer did some of them. And he decided that he wanted to have a small keel boat, 22 foot, sound familiar? Two-person boat, however. And he named the boat the Bug. And he took the Bug and out to Cape Cod, all up Long Island Sound, down to Jersey Shore, Barnegat Bay, the Chesapeake. And he spent a year trying to sell his beloved Bug and never sold a single boat. That winter, he's having lunch with a Madison Avenue friend of his in New York and complaining about his boat, the Bug, and the guy thinks about it. He says, you know, apparently nobody really wants to own a boat named the Bug. You need a better name. How about the Star? And the Star's been a pretty good boat ever since. And then in 1971, a guy I know had designed a boat called the Weekender. And he asked me to sail this boat. I'm 6'2", 180 at least at that time. And so I sailed it in the Weekender, but he wasn't selling any Weekenders. And he had a Canadian friend who said, you know, you need a little more space age name. Weekender, you know, it doesn't sound racy. How about the Laser? And the Laser has done pretty well. And then, of course, Carl Olberg came along and started out with a design, the Electra, which was not a good airplane before that, but he wisely called the boat the Ensign. It's not pretty well ever said. Okay, I brought some pictures along. Would you like to see some pictures? Sure. Okay, let me tell you what we're going to see. I have locked the doors. This is 9 films. They're 45 minutes each. We'll be out of here by 3 in the morning. And this is my daughter making sandcastles. Actually, it's all sailing stuff. And I do want to say, I've enjoyed immensely being with ESPN since 1985. And thank you for your comment of working for NBC. And I look forward to covering the Olympics next year.
We'd love to see you there.
Get up early because I think it starts at noon in London and 7 a.m. here. But anyway, breakfast television. So anyway, as you can imagine, I've built quite a good library in sailing and interviewed all kinds of people. So, and I edited this about 10 days ago. And you're the second group to see it, so I'm still fine-tuning it. But it's a potpourri of what our sport is all about. And I'm going to narrate this live. I don't have a script here. So you're in my ESPN voice booth with me, just kind of winging it and going live. So I hope you enjoy this. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, hold on here. Let me get this working. It works. Yeah, I'm going to talk, believe me. I'm going for perfection here. Let me just get this working. Okay. The worst talk I ever did, I was speaking and a garbage truck came through the side wall of the barn. Let's turn it down here a little bit. Ready? Okay, I'm going to start it again because I'm going for perfection. Okay, let's see. And we got the volume down a little bit. Okay. Now this is an important shot here. The reason I have this is my little opener here. This is Boston Harbor. Not that Boston Harbor is, let's pull the base down. But there's a lighthouse out there off Boston Harbor, and I think anytime you can see a lighthouse, it's a beacon of hope, a beacon of determination, and it's a sign that when you're heading to sea, life is special, whether it's on a lake, a river, or a bay, or even the ocean. So anyway, whether you're making departure or returning from being out in the water, would you agree with me? The time sailing is special. All right, here we go. Little opener here.
There's nothing that's quite empowering as figuring out how to make that invisible finger push you around.
Nice name.
It's in my blood. I've always dreamt about sailing, and that's what I like to do. It's a passion. It's a calling.
Okay, that's my warmer-upper. We're going to go around the waterfront, all kinds of stuff here. You ready? This is night sailing. Anyway, a little look at college sailing. 214 colleges tried to get to the Nationals, 18 made it. And these sailors are not bashful with our onboard cameras. The winning team, Boston College, had a 5.7 average out of 18 teams. Just shows you how competitive it is, how tight it is. And look at this boat handling here. The Nationals this year were taken in the Columbia River Gorge. Oops. Oops. All right, college sailing. Next up, Olympics. We're going to take a little look at 08 and a preview of 2012. In 08, China did a nice job with the sailing venue here. 10 Olympic classes, race around windward-leeward courses, and there were 400 competitors, 264 boats, 65 countries. The medal race, the last race, windward-leeward twice around, designed to take about 40 minutes. The USA won 2 medals. One was in the fin class. 25-year-old Zach Raley went neck and neck with superstar Ben Ainsley from Great Britain all week long. Ainsley got the gold, Zach Raley got a silver. Always nice to see an American sailor hop up on the podium. Also in the single-handed women's class in the laser radial, Anna Tunnicliffe had to be 4th or better in the final race to get a gold medal. So here's the start of her race. There's the gun. The top 10 boats are in the medal race, and she's worried that she's over and heads back. Now, if Lithuania wins this race, Anna has to finish 4th or better, but she's off to a slow start. There's Lithuania on the left, dipping China. Of course, got the starboard advantage right after, and would take the lead. Anna working the right side of the course, finds very little wind, and here she is, way behind on leg 1. At the windward mark, she is in 9th place. Ouch. 3 legs to go. Lithuania's in the lead. At the leeward mark, it gets worse. Still back in 9th place. She doesn't like the right side of the course, so she goes left, but no problem. Gets out to the lay line, Lithuania on the right lead, no wind. But over her shoulder, she sees a puff. So she heads out there, way beyond the ley line, gets the puff, and starts reaching in. In my commentary, I'm saying things like, go, Anna, go. Unbiased, huh? And she rounds the windward mark with 1 leg to go in 3rd. So down when she goes, 1 more leg. Got to be in the top 4. She's in 3rd. American contingent kind of cheering here. And Australia bails out to go attack China. I guess they wanted a bronze, leaving Anna in 2nd. So Lithuania did win the race. Anna never won a single heat, but she did have the best average score, and with that comeback, ended up 2nd in this race and got the gold medal. The first American woman, that's her mother, Okay, Mom, it's over. Anyway, Anna's the first American woman to win a gold medal in sailing in the past 20 years. Pretty impressive. So anyway, a little look at that. Now, the next games are going to be sailed next year, a year from now, in Weymouth, England, about 100 miles west of London. We just had a test regatta this past week. And it's a place noted for some good winds, and there'll be 10 Olympic classes there. Anna's decided to go into max racing this time. 3 women in the boat sailing these Elliott 6Ms. A little preview. Now, every January, we have an Olympic classes regatta, U.S. Sailing holds, down in Miami, the Olympic Rolex OCR, Olympic classes regatta. This year, 716 sailors were there, 63 countries, 194 of them Americans, and I filmed this with cameras on the water, cameras on board, and cameras in the air. And very unusual to see small boats with pictures this good. I'm going to make a show of this will air on ESPN this fall. Out of this. Watch your head. And I love the intensity of the sailors. Good breezes in January in Miami. Everybody fighting hard. The British, I'll tell you, they got some darn good sailors. That's on board. Whoa! Danger of having an onboard camera. I like the intensity of these guys. And the Paralympic classes were there too. There's Clay Johnson. And Zach Whaley in the spin. Whoa! Whoa! Well, that's why we practice these things. Wait for me! So anyway, every single one of these sailors has a goal of reaching Weymouth a year from now. Our trials will be concluded in December, so we'll see who our team's going to be. But anyway, a little preview of Olympic competition. Small boats. Next up, we're going to do a little long distance racing here, which could be all the way from one end of the lake to the other. But anyway, this is the transatlantic. I've gone across the ocean 6 times in my career, and this was in '05. I was on this clipper ship. And halfway across the ocean, I talked to our captain into letting us get into a dinghy to get the picture of this shot. The truth, we all got seasick. But it was a good shot. 15 knots, 30 knots of wind, 15-foot seas. I went up the rig twice. Took me a week to get courage to go up there a second time. Hey, do you remember that controversy in the Super Bowl a few years ago? Well, this is what one would call a wardrobe malfunction. We asked this guy if he wanted some foul weather gear. He said, nah, don't worry about a thing, I'll be fine. Okay. But it made a good picture. Anyway, a little shot of racing across the Atlantic. Now, I told some glory pictures or stories, but it's not always smooth sailing. I don't know if anybody here has ever done this. We'll see some honesty in a minute. But here's the Newport Bermuda race a year ago. I was a tactician on a 66-footer, but I've been racing here for the last couple of years. And here we are at the start. I'm calling the shots. We got 635 miles to go. You might ask, what are you doing on port? And the committee, if you can believe this, called us over the line at the start. Has anybody here ever been over the line at the start? Welcome to my club. I can't believe they're calling our number. So while the fleet is heading to Bermuda, we have to bear off and sail back to cross the line properly. A slow way to go. And the crew's not talking to me at this point. But with 635 miles of open ocean, heck, we can get there. And an hour later, we did get ourselves in the lead. So all was forgiven. And racing to Bermuda, the light air race this past year, all the crew is sitting on the side, mighty happy to be on their way. 12 knots of wind out of the south, just like it'll be here tomorrow. We'll see. And when you're out there in the ocean, dolphins are always assigned a safe passage for mariners. And these fish are amazing athletes. Take a look at this guy jump. Wow. And at night, the watch routine continues. 4 hours on, 4 hours off, always pressing for Bermuda, trying to take the Gulf Stream to our advantage. Hey, there's some clouds, maybe some more wind underneath there. Get some thermal breeze. And for us on Aurora, we were able to make the passage in 71 hours. Not bad for 635 miles. And always nice to reach that island paradise of Bermuda. But it's not always smooth sailing. Now I hope this is not a harbinger for the next couple days. But every now and then you get becalmed. A sailor's worst nightmare. Nothing, nada, zero. Out there drifting in the ocean, worried that your competition over the horizon is speeding away from you. What can you do but sit and wait and hope some wind comes along? And there's a whale! Drifting along, ghosting, hoping to make progress. Here was my commentary at the time.
0.00.
That is slow. Now let me just show you how much fun I'm having. I'm wearing the TR hat, TR, Tom's River. Anyway. There I am. That's me, draped over the wheel. Such enthusiasm. Hey, a water spout. Let's go for it. All right, in contrast, this is the Vineyard race last year. Stamford, Connecticut, out the Vineyard Tower and back. Hurricane Earl's just blown through. It's blowing 25 plus knots. The guy behind us is a little out of control. I'm at the wheel here and I'm trying hard to get the boat to go 20 knots. Got a guy out at the end of the boom. Gotta be careful out there. Hold on. Luckily, we had a halyard on him, and we got him back on board in about 8 seconds. Notice the beard every August. So I'm trying hard to get 20 knots now. Good breeze. Of course, we're heading downwind. And life is good with the wind. There it is. We finally got 20 knots. Now give the wheel up. The flip side of this is having to go back upwind. And downwind in the day, upwind at night. It got down to 48 degrees. Anyway, suddenly this is when you start questioning, why in the world are we out here? All right, one more long distance race. My friend Stan Honey, who was the navigator in his French boat a year ago, in a record attempt around the world to try and break the Jules Verne record. This trimaran was able to do it in 48 days. 23.7 knot average, 24 hours a day, 48 days. One American, all the rest French, and they did it. I asked Stan, how fast could these boats really go? He said he thought the record could be broken by 5 more days. Pretty impressive, huh? All right, now I'm going to show you 7 short movies that are 40 seconds each. Here we go. Heavy winds, the essence of sailing. It's blowing hard, you're working hard, sailing on the edge of control. Everybody's in tune and into it. When you see the competitor wipe out, don't look. Just keep concentrating on your boat. Oh, a rip sail, bummer. A runaway spinnaker. Notice no heads are over the rail. Nice shot from the air. I'm in the helicopter looking down here. Anyway, anytime it's blowing hard, the waves are big, it's fun. And speed sailing. This is a trifoiler going, this is me steering this thing. I'm doing 36 knots. Look at that thing accelerate. Yellow page is 46 knots. And these catamarans sailing around the world at breakneck speed. You can literally fly. And I like these moths, where they've changed a little since the moths I sailed down in Long Beach Island. Windsurfers have gone 51 knots and literally fly. But the record now, 54 knots, is a kiteboard. Is that sailing? And then we have the classics. What's a classic? An Ensign. A boat that gets better looking with age. And the older boats and the newer boats are just as competitive with each other. A classic is something special. A boat that you want to be on. And this is a race around the Isle of Wight a few summers back. 201 boats honoring the Yacht America that went around the island faster than 12 other boats in 1851. I was on a 12 meter for this, KZ5. You get around the needles there, always kind of cool. And the A-Scows, what a beautiful boat. Popular on the lakes. I sailed the E-Scow Easterns at Cuca Lake a number of years ago. What a beautiful place. And so is Canandaigua. 505s in San Francisco Bay. Love one design sailing where it's you. You and your crew make the difference. And that's what all 44 of your boats are going to do here over the next couple days. The Venerable Lightning class, designed by Olin Stevens. The Opties, gotta love the Opties. This young girl's trying to, now what I do? Well, I'll just tack. And the Snipe class. I love one there. Melton's 32, popular boat today. That's my daughter when she was a little younger. We'll get there in a few minutes. And cruising. I have made 3 trips to Antarctica and I've gone to 80 degrees north. People ask me, how is it down there? I say, cool. I put a time-lapse camera on the bow of the ship. I've done 3 under sail and 1 on a small ship. This was 2008. 2/3 of the world's fresh water is trapped as ice on the frozen continent. And 98% of Antarctica, which is the size of North America, is ice. And you can get the feeling of what it was like here in upstate New York by the glaciers down there. Thankfully, the glaciers built these beautiful lakes for us just about 10,000 years ago. Because ice is loud and exploding and cracking all the time. And I love the penguins. Hey, wait for me! Swim lessons! Come on, let's go. Come on! Foreboding place, isn't it? But I recommend everybody get to Antarctica at least once in your lifetime. There's a glacier. Watch your step there, bud. Hey! All right, here's a little from the 1930s. Day sail on the yacht Bonsai, to shift gears here a little bit. Color pictures. 1938, very unusual. And everybody's having fun, laughing, hijinks out there in the water. I like these guys that wanted to climb the mast. Never mind. There you go, always fun to be on the water, don't you agree? All right, so this is my little tribute to 3 great sailing cities in America. Marblehead, Massachusetts, which I spent lots of time on. The Hovey Lighthouse there on the neck, very special place, Marblehead Harbor. Another great sailing town in this country is further south, Newport, Rhode Island, where I spend time every summer. The Newport Bridge, of course they got a nice boat show there, home of the summer home in New York Yacht Club at Harbor Court. And anytime you're in Newport, Rhode Island, life is pretty special there off Castle Hill. And the third great American city for sailing, can you guess? My hometown, Annapolis. Anyway, 35,000 people, and everybody there is completely in the sport of sailing. Home of the United States Naval Academy. So anyway, I tell young people, you want to sail? Live in one of these great towns, Marblehead, Annapolis, and Newport. All right, you ready for an epic film? 3 minutes, my entire life story. Here we go. That's me right there in the middle. 4 years old, 1954. I grew up sailing on Tom's River. That's me in age 6, 11. I got a penguin, that's my father. And it wasn't always smooth sailing. Yep, that's me capsized on Barnegat Bay. But I kept sailing and winning pickle dishes and plugging away. There's a B-cat, raced all kinds of cat boats, scows with the legendary Sam Merrick. And off to New York Maritime College. I graduated at State University of New York. I got 2,000 races in during my 4 years there. I look the same, don't I? Anyway, at San Diego at the College Nationals. I ended up over at Kings Point for 4 years as the sailing coach. And all this activity of sailing got the attention of this guy. And I teamed up with Ted Turner. I sailed in 2 of my 5 America's Cup campaigns. I sailed in, 2 of them were with Ted. And what a thrill to be uncourageous and actually be on a winning boat. I was 27 at the time of this one. Anyways, also the only crew member on Courageous to join Ted in the infamous Fastnet Storm of 1979, the roughest ocean race on record. On Tenacious, we did win that race. And as I've been trying to explain our sport to non-sailors, standing in the swimming pool, moving boats around, my friend Jim Kelly, saying goodbye to Peter Blake on his Whitbread boat, that's me jumping over, have a nice ride. Cape Horn over my shoulder, I've climbed that twice. Like I said, it's cool down there in Antarctica. And I've covered the Olympics 5 times. I very much look forward to Weymouth next year. Even racing under the watchful eye of the Statue of Liberty. And the Australians didn't know it, but there it is, the bridge. There's my family, my wife, believe it or not, 37 years last week. In our home in Annapolis. That's a miracle. My Swan 42 Mustang. There's daughter Brooke, went to NYU, now at grad school at Maryland. Daughter Christy's at Harvard Law School right now. And daughter Ashley is at grad school of Florida. That's in a duck boat last year. They seem bigger. I sailed with John Kerry last summer. I'm sailing with him next week, by the way. Racing my Etchels, we won the nude regatta this year in Annapolis. Let's see what else we got. Sailing the mighty boat, J-Boat Endeavor. I've done that many times over the years. That's kind of fun sailing those big babies. And the A-Cats of Barnegat Bay. That's on the Spy, 2. And I love the A-Scows. These things go 25 knots. It's Lake Geneva, Buddy Melga's country. And our Courageous crew, we get together every 5 years. Our next reunion is next summer. Not a single crew member has ever missed one of our reunions. Says something about the leadership of Ted. These days I try to make heroes out of other people. This is a film I did for Outward Bound. And our ESPN crew, they're as much as family as our Courageous team. And most recently, as mentioned, for the last 2 years I've been trying hard with our sport, U.S. Sailing, based in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. So anyway, that's my entire career. I'm not done. Thank you. Thank you very much. That ends the first half. Let's see, we've been around the world, we've been on oceans, we've done thingies, big boats, crash and burn. Any other regatta you'd like to hear about? America's Cup. I'm confused by the America's Cup. I am, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. I got a little film here. But let me just kick off this film. During the America's Cup in '07, I put together an hour show for ESPN on the entire history of the America's Cup. Nobody ever pulled it off before. It took me 2 years to do it, to get all the rights and photographs and what do you say in 1 hour. And I was about almost done with my beloved program after all this work, and my good friend at ESPN, Jeffrey Mason, has only got about 34 Emmys or something. He just produced World Cup soccer for the women this year and did it last year. Sailing and soccer. Jeffrey, you're doing a good job here. He said, you know, Jobson,